everybody. Welcome. I'm Daniel G. Garza, and this is another episode of Put It Together Conversations. Thank you for joining us. It is Saturday, February 13th, 2021, and I hope you've been following some of the other shows. Today, my guest, funny enough, you know how I always tell you where we met? We couldn't figure out how we met, but I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. Let me start off with his bio. Chris is a recovering management consultant and a technology exec who has worked in startups and digital transformation way too long. This includes working inside lots of large companies in banking, finance, insurance, and media. He's excited and is involved in several ventures in the web content, original programming, and creative production industries that are revolutionary content and entertainment in the digital age. Better Roads is the combination of many personal and professional elements for Chris, and he's extremely excited about the possibilities of alcohol-free and adult premium beverages. So we go ahead and bring Chris in. Hey, Chris, welcome to the show, sir.
Daniel, great to see you.
How are you doing?
I am great. Glad to join you out there on the West Coast.
You are in the East Coast, correct?
That's right. As you can see by the darkness behind me, it's already evening.
Well, if it helps anything, the darkness is in my heart. So
is that
I live
we'll
in the dark
later?
Do what?
We'll get into that later.
Yes, we'll explain more on that. Not to you folks, as you probably don't know, but this show is just my way of bringing people into my cult, and this is how I do it.
Okay, I'll try to keep that in mind.
Yes, it's like where are we? Oh yeah, there. It's like, hey, yeah, let me invite you to a show, and then at the end I do my welcome to the darkness pitch. And just kidding, folks. Stop. Y'all know that's how it is. I'm trying to think about how I first found you guys, and I don't remember if I read an article or I saw a posting for it, but I saw that it was alcohol. It was probably a post on Instagram or somewhere.
Yeah, maybe.
And I was like, alcohol-free drinks. Now, for those of you watching, there are an array of alcohol-free beers in the market. And you can go to the store, go to the liquor store, and you'll have a walk-book. Some of them are really good. Some of them I do buy because they go great with the steak. Some of them, it's like, okay, I'll have some water instead, thank you. But very few companies make alcohol-free adult drinks, like things that so can we talk about this before we forget? So this is toast. Can you see that?
You must have liked it.
I poured it in a cold glass.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's very good. Okay, can we talk about this before we move on with your?
Yeah, I mean, so we're an e-commerce site that offers a lot of different alcohol, and we specialize in alcohol-free beverages of all different categories. Toast, when you're drinking, kind of falls into the kind of almost like a catch-all category I call adult beverages, because it's not trying to be something else, but it's got a kind of unique flavor profile. And I always say, well, what's an adult beverage? Probably if you gave it to a kid. Like if you gave it to one of my kids, they wouldn't like it. So, but it's got like a certain bite to it. There's some that go kind of along, maybe down the bitters angle or sweet and sour. So there's a variety of different kinds, and that one is kind of carved out a little spot for itself, and we carry it, and it does quite well.
Does this have bitters in it?
Not that I know of. That one's a bit lighter, but it's refreshing, I'd say. And it's good as a mixer also, if you're trying to make a mocktail with maybe some of the other kind of spirit-based.
I would even buy that too. That's pretty good. Like that. Okay, y'all keep talking. I'm just going to keep thinking. No, and no, not because you're here, but it's
a little complicated. I mean, like a lot of the adult beverages that we carry, that's maybe one element to it. They're a bit complex. Like they kind of have a aftertaste or a certain kind of element to it that, you might not get from just more generic, sodas or what have you. So yeah, they definitely do that on purpose.
Because I recently had, let me find the picture. I posted it somewhere. Excuse me, the bubbles. I recently had one, which I told you I was going to have it with a. Now I'm forgetting. Again, folks, today is one of those days where I'm having blanks, but I had the one little that looks like a beer, but I thought I had a picture for it, and I don't have the picture for it. But I ordered a steak, and I told you I'm going to get a steak, and I'm going to order it. I know it's up there somewhere. I'll find it in a minute. But
Yeah.
so we end this part of the conversation. I ordered, for those of you that go online, we're going to put up the website so you guys can check it out. When you go on the site, there is a sample box, and it has like 6, 7 different. This is the second one I've had, but the first one I promised, I was like, I'm not going to have it till I have a steak. I did. I ordered Sizzler. I had a nice little steak, sat down for dinner, had a beer. I was like, this is cool. And I felt good afterwards. I wasn't like being all stupid. So that's always a good thing.
Nice.
That's a good thing. For everybody joining, remember, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. So if you'd like to be part of the conversation, join in. If you're on Facebook, go into the video. You can ask your question there. On YouTube, just type down in the comments. And on Twitter, if you tap into it, I will see it here on my phone. So make sure that you join the conversation. If you're watching this on replay, please subscribe and like our page here on YouTube, and make sure you share with your friends. If you're on Twitter, will you retweet this for us so we can check it out and find you? Let's get into your story. Chris Becker, tell us how you put it together.
Sure. So, it's very much a personal story. So not drinking, was on vacation out in your neck of the woods in California, actually in Hermosa Beach with my family, and the kids and wife were, out at the beach, and I was working in the coffee shop nearby and probably procrastinating, doing whatever, trying to not do whatever I was supposed to be doing. And I was like, you know what? I want to have some beer, but alcohol free at the place we were staying for the week that we were there. And so I started looking, because I was like, I don't want, like a lot of people, all I really knew was like O'Doul's or something like that. And so I wanted to see what else was out there. So I spent what ended up becoming like the whole afternoon searching different breweries online and being surprised at actually how much I found. And, but, like I said, it took a lot of research, and probably spent, at least like $100 or more with shipping costs, and, needing to order like 6 or 12 to kind of make it worthwhile, or minimum orders, and not even knowing if I was going to like them or not. So after that, I was kind of like, well, it was exciting to see that there was actually some stuff out there. But then I thought, maybe if there's other people like me who want to try things out, but not have to go through all of that process. So Better Roads is basically an e-commerce marketplace, as well as a community, because a lot of people who are interested in alcohol free, as the name kind of implies, people have different roads that might bring them to be thinking about drinking less or not at all, or what have you. So it was really the idea to try to make alcohol free easy, fun, and great tasting. And that ended up becoming one of our earliest kind of curated boxes, which was, a mix 6. So we curate and taste a lot of different alcohol-free beers, and we'll put them into kind of a subscription or a mix box so people can try, buy 6, but it's one from 6 different breweries. So you can kind of get a taste, because it's such a new space. It's such a new area. And, the vast majority of people, and it's so early, such early days, people don't know that really what's out there. So we're kind of that place where people can go and try and experiment or share with friends, and kind of see who else is out there talking about what's going on in this very early kind of segment.
Well, one of the cool things is, I'm trying to get away from this, but I got to come back. Okay, so I found Partake.
Oh, Partake, yeah. It's one of the alcohol-free, non-alcoholic beers, yeah.
So that's the one that I had with my steak. Bomb. It just reminded me of being in Texas and having a beer and a steak, and it was, as a recovering alcoholic, being clean and sober for over 13 years.
That's awesome.
Thank you. It's Of course, you don't want to go back to the idiot that I was when I was drinking. But there's the taste. Yeah, I remember the taste, the way the steak tastes when you have a beer with it. It's just, and that's what this did. It just made me remember like the fun side of sitting down with the beer and the steak. So anyway, I'll get on with it. That's
Yeah.
going to make me hungry. So I'll be ordering some Sicily tonight. I'm going to tell you. Um, so can I ask this though, because you're talking about working, and we talked about this before the first time that you and I met, about being and working and trying to order drinks. What was there alcoholism like around you? Was that the purpose, or was just the purpose of uh, offering something different?
Yeah, no, I mean, for me personally, yes. At least in terms of my personal story, as well as, some family history there. So that was an element of it. And, really that's to some extent where it started. The idea that, you know, others might also appreciate kind of sharing some of this information and seeing what's out there. As we started kind of growing the business and talking to more and more producers and seeing more beverages, and that could be spirit alternatives or wine, sparkling wines, alcohol-free sparkling wines. I started to, I started to learn about other communities that aren't necessarily complete abstinence. So there's a group, there's a whole movement out there around sober curious. This idea that you can kind of experiment or really learn about maybe your relationship with alcohol, but you might not be identifying yourself as an alcoholic. So, I think it's definitely a spectrum, and I have a lot of respect, on the AA and abstinence side. And, I think a lot of it is also being very respectful about the idea that, this is here as an alternative, but also realizing that for some people, it's better not even to so some of the alcohol frees, for example, beers are 0.5. So, in A, sometimes that might not be, that's sometimes too close. So it's definitely part of it from my story, but there's so many segments I'm finding that are kind of other elements. So it's kind of broad. It's definitely an important part, but it's also broader than that. Like right down to people like women who are pregnant or people that are, not drinking for a certain period of time. Dry January just ended. That's becoming bigger and bigger. So there's lots of different kind of parts of the community. But yes, complete abstinence and sobriety is definitely important, for me, and also for, some of the people that are kind of trying to see what's out there.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I just recently joined a company called Orexo, and they have a product called Orbita. Orbita is an online program that kind of tracks your drinking and your anxieties and depressions.
Okay.
But I just recently learned the term uh, sober curious. I did not know. I was like, what the hell? I'm like, I've heard like gay curious, but that's a thing. But like, um, as a Latino, come from a culture that enjoys drinking. We enjoy our tequila and we enjoy our cervezas. It's a very true fact. Uh, I know a lot of people who are not. Now that I'm older, I'm like, you're not alcoholic. You just when you celebrate, you just celebrate a little too much, but it's not a daily thing.
Yeah.
These are really cool options, and you have if you're going to tell somebody to be sober curious, but you're not offering an alternative, then it's kind of pointless. Like in the energy world, I work a lot with energy. If you're getting rid of negative energy, you've got to fill it in with positive energy for you to feel complete.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So if I come and
I think, if you're going to take something away, what are you offering kind of as part of that? I think some of it, like, so sober curious, the term, at least in terms of when it became in popular culture, was coined by a woman named Ruby Warrington, who wrote a book about being sober curious. And she was originally from the UK and moved to New York and then started a group called Club Soda, which is, people just trying to get together who are also like-minded. about that. Although I think, the idea of it had been around a lot earlier than that. And in hearing her talk, I think she's noted that, there's so many more choices now than maybe even 10 years ago. So that it's more than just kind of something you read about. You can actually take action if, you want to try to have some sort of ritual or celebratory or just cocktail experience, and you just don't want the alcohol.
Now, but we're kind of for lack of a better, we're boxing you into this part. There's so much more to what you've done career-wise. What was the first thing you did? Not necessarily your first job, but like career-wise, your career path. What was the first thing you done?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was quite different than this. I mean, it was I was in management consulting, so fairly, mainstream, doing large scale technology projects with large companies, traveling, 4 out of 5 days a week, day in, day out, all through the 90s and then the aughts. And then I kind of got out of that and went into the startup world, but it was very technology focused. So in the aughts, this is back when, YouTube was still, just being started, and Facebook, you had to have a university email address to be able to be part of it. It was kind of the Wild West of social media. Twitter was just tiny at the time. It was only being used kind of by techno geeks at other technology conferences to share what they were seeing and hearing. I was part of a startup and was the CEO of a user-generated content company. And this was back in the day. You might remember, like, big brands were making user-generated content commercials for like the Super Bowl and things like that, where it was really early experimentation. And we built a platform that we licensed to large brands, advertising agencies, and media companies to leverage user-generated content, and ended up actually selling and exiting that company, probably like 10 years ago. So that was kind of my foray into, I guess, entrepreneurship, and bit with a technology bent, then kind of went back into larger scale technology. And then Better Roads is really much more a passion project. But I think that background kind of is partly why we definitely started as an e-commerce kind of focus. It was before everything that's been going on lately. And then, when kind of the lockdowns came in with the pandemic, I think people being able to maybe be more mindful about almost anything, but alcohol consumption was definitely part of it. And then also needing to be able to look for what's available online as opposed to, through bricks and mortar. That kind of really brought some of what we were doing to the forefront a lot more. So it was definitely kind of pretty standard corporate technology, and then some startup experience. And then those things, along with kind of my own personal experience and interests, kind of came together to get us to Better Roads.
Were you always like innovator, challenger?
No, I would always probably describe myself more as an operator, meaning like other people had the big ideas and I was more the person who was very, kind of into the details, project management type person, and would get into the kind of the specifics of how to turn that into action. I think maybe as I've gotten older, or I think when it's partly something that's more personal, like this is for me, I think more of maybe my imaginative side is coming out, because it is just from a deeper place than, say, doing consulting for some big company. So I think that has definitely come more into the mix as part of this project or this kind of journey. But yeah, no, not so much. I think that's something more that's kind of more specific to this particular company. Before that, I was doing a lot of more operational type stuff.
Because I figure, as a consultant and advisor, because as you go along working with different companies and looking into their structure, did that help you when you said, okay, I'm going to develop my own
Yeah,
thing?
I think that's a good point. So, I've probably worked in, I was easily 40 companies. Like I have a shoebox full of security passes from all the different companies that I've worked at. And you start to see patterns. Basically, at the end of the day, it's all about people and you know, uh, human behavior. Whether you're at a bank or at a retail company or an energy, oil and gas, worked at a lot of different places. So much of it, when you start to see enough examples, you see that a lot of it comes down to just people and what they're interested in and what is important and what's not. So I think I joke sometimes that it was basically I learned over and over again what not to do. Mistakes, 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 seeing what doesn't work. And as opposed to having some, great grand design of all the best, people like to use words like best practices in consulting and, uh, uh, that kind of verbiage. But to tell you the honest truth, a lot of the reality was just learning what not to do, mistakes
I,
after mistakes, and just kind of saying, "Oh, I'm not going to do that again." You learn the
I,
hard way.
yeah, 'cause I've watched a lot of my friends that launched podcasts and live streams and what they were doing and the way they were interviewing, and I was like, okay, I don't like that. Like
Yes.
I would look at myself and go, okay, I don't like that because I saw that and I don't like the way that looks. Don't like that. And then in the end, you might be left. Okay, let me ask this question. Because in the end, sometimes you're left with so little I likes that people get scared and they're like, I'm just not going to do it because there's not enough to go on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but then I think, maybe hopefully along the way for every 5 things you don't like, maybe you see something you do like, or the mixture of all the things you saw brings up a new idea. It's kind of like dating, maybe too. It's like you learn through meeting people. It's like, yeah, no, I don't like that. Oh, I don't like that. And then, almost through process of elimination. But yeah, I hear you.
uh, that's an interesting thing. Process of elimination. What are some things in your life that you had to eliminate to get to where you are today?
Um, well, it's funny. I guess on the one side, looking at kind of, when I was in my 20s and 30s, that more of a party lifestyle I definitely had plenty of time and did, was definitely out there, not missing almost any event or party. I think learning to decide, where you're not going to spend your time, or when you're, certain groups or crowds, take you in a certain direction. That would be one example. And then work, I'm 50 now, so I joke that I only like to work with people I like at this point. I've spent a lot of time and a lot of years working with assholes and just people that are difficult or whatever. And often there's a lot of really bright people. Some are difficult to work with, and some aren't. If I have the choice between the two, I'm going to work with the people that aren't difficult to work with. So that's
That
definitely
is,
one. I've definitely, my tolerance for assholes has dropped, probably to a fault.
but you, as the 50 group, uh, it's so true though. Just but it's so true that as I get older, I'm like, I don't have to put up with your fool anymore. Like I just,
Yeah. Why didn't I think of this before?
um, because I realized that I was spending more energy trying to get through to people just to get to the starting point of a project than just working through the project. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Wrestling and kind of just, getting kind of walking over the coals of just trying to get to the place you wanted to get to right off the bat.
so, of the many things that you ventured in and done, what was the most difficult thing you did, and how did you get through
Well, check back with me in a few months because I think this
it?
could be it. But before that, I would say the startups and everything that goes along with it, with consulting, you don't end up owning things end to end at the end of the day. You don't have to carry the can fully. You're kind of there telling other people what to do, and before you know it, you're off to the next gig. So there was always almost a lack of accountability that went with that. In this world, and at least in the in the working world, professional world, I find these, having done a couple of startups now, it's definitely much harder. And harder than I would have thought when I thought I was I thought I knew everything as a consultant. Getting into it, there's just so much, and you've got to figure out, everything from your strategy right down to, issues with human resources and everything in between. So I think I've learned that that's, a real respect for other people who've been doing that for much longer than I have and are out there kind of taking those risks and putting themselves out there. That's been a big learning for me, and I have a lot of respect for people that do that.
Was it because you talk about advising people? You come in, you see the situation, help them fix it up. Is it hard to walk away from a situation like that?
No, in fact, that was one of the best parts. I mean, because you got to see so many different things. They usually had a natural beginning and the end, because they typically are projects or something like that, like a merger or something like that. So not so much. Some of them were big, and you were spending a lot of time with a lot of people day in and day out. So it was kind of maybe emotional at the end, but it was a natural end. So no, it was, and then other times working in some of these companies, walking out the door for the last time, it was a huge relief, the stress. But it doesn't, it just doesn't have the same depth as kind of, and like you and I were talking about some of the stuff that you do, I think, kind of like whole initiatives, even this program that you're managing, I think has a much deeper kind of pull to it. So it's you don't miss it as much in the consulting world when you move from one gig to the next.
That makes sense. Let me remind everybody, you are watching Put It Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel G. Garza. My guest today is Mr. Chris Becker with Better Roads. Go check him out. He put up the lecture. There you go. Go check him out. Although the conversation started speaking about non-alcoholic drinks, we are venturing conversation into the different things he's done through his career. What are some of your highlights? What are some of the peaks that you like in the memoir?
Wow. I think the first startup the exiting of that one, and then the selling of that, it was so intense. That was a big peak for me to kind of see, well, wow, I could do this end to end and see something right through to the finish. That was a big one. There was a couple big projects that I worked on where they were so massive, to see them through to the finish was also quite exciting, and were kind of pinnacles. But they're, not to get into the details of them, I've got 2 or 3 that would stick out in my mind. And then about 12 years ago, as part of that first startup I mentioned in the social media user generated space, I moved from Canada to the US. That was a tough slog, and then ended up getting married and having kids. So that whole process, and then kind of finally kind of going through it, and then feeling like I had quote unquote made it, in finally getting to, was kind of just almost like a student in New York, even though I was older, after having made the move, and kind of getting to the points and having my kids was probably the biggest of all. So
I would imagine, because I think it also, like, as we get older, I feel like now that I do things for me, that I'm not working for a particular company or
Yeah.
clocking in and clocking out. Like there's this blurred line between personal and professional where like they come together. Does that make sense? Like it's
Yeah. I mean, maybe because, you have some ability now and some maneuverability where, like, for me, every day is different. So no one's, I mean, often no one's maybe even going to notice if I'm not at my desk at a certain period of time or not around. Like my calendar, no one really knows what's on my calendar except for me, and I like it that way. Whereas, when I was, I'm in the 90s, like if you weren't at your desk, and maybe for folks in the corporate world, people noticed because you came into the office and you worked, and phones were ringing and fax machines were buzzing and people were walking around, and you had voicemail, and your voicemail might have 12 messages and you'd have to go through them all. And if you weren't at your desk, people were like, well, where's Chris? What happened? Whereas now, and I kind of envy everyone in this gig economy world now where, even during the pandemic, everyone's still working, but I was on the phone with some friends, and one of them was in Sayulita, Mexico. And he was like, oh yeah, the town's full of people just with their computers and their headphones, and they're just on calls and doing their emails or doing whatever. And I was like, wow, that was not like in their 20s, 30s, 40s. It was not like that when I was in that, kind of in that grind.
yeah. I think I left cubicles to that mid 2000s, like 2005. Something. Like I left cubicles, I was done with it. Well, I went to rehab too, folks, so that's kind of part of it. But that aside, I never went back. I just never went back. And I remember working for a big financial organization, and I was the special projects department. It was just me. So I would come into work in the morning, and like you said, check the voicemails, check your emails. And I hated emails then, just because I knew there was like, we need this, can you print this, we need a pie chart. And you're like, oh my God. That's probably what led me to drugs and alcohol. So they say that. But I lived in the corporate world. I was like, work hard, party hard, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't, like, I enjoy so much more. I know I wake up in the morning, there's emails, but it's things that I love to do. And I'm a big fan of if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Do you feel that you've reached that point?
Yes, I'm really lucky that way. And I work with a lot of great people. So I do love what I do. I'm trying, from a personal perspective, trying to carve out more of, just finding other things to do, because I can easily get sucked into it all the time. So, spending time by yourself, reading, or trying to be more mindful, health and wellness, from an exercise perspective, doing a lot more of those things and making a conscious effort, cleaning the house, being present when I'm with my kids. There's so many things that I'm really trying to kind of focus on more, because I love what I do to a fault, and it can be consuming. It's almost like drugs and alcohol. Like you can let it consume you if you let it, and it can be intoxicating.
I nod like we're in a workaholic anonymous group. I mean, Daniel, and I'm workaholic. Yeah, I think a lot of my friends fall into that category. We just love whatever we do, and there's no, for somebody like me, there's no, hey, can you do this by Monday? We need to do it by Monday. Like, it's like I need to do this by Monday. By the way, I want to do a shout out to Andrea, who works with you, because she's the one that's been emailing back and forth with me, so she's awesome. So
yeah, she's great. Good, I'm glad.
So
yeah.
Andrea,
thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Andrea, for putting up with my emails. I appreciate it, because I can send a lot of emails. So I definitely because I want to make sure everybody gets.
You're that guy.
I'm that guy. I want to make sure that everybody gets all the information. I'm like, this is where you go. This is what we're doing. This is your password. This is what you need. So thank you for putting up with me.
Well, it works. If it wasn't for all that stuff, then you could easily, a glitch could hang up and you mess up the whole show. So thank you.
Well, that is taking notes from what you were saying earlier. That is one of my learned what not to do. I learned from early on the emails by not being extremely e- explicit about what you need to do. Like, we are meeting on Tuesday, January such and such date at such and such time, Pacific Standard Time. Like, I learned a long time ago.
And it's good you did, because in my calendar, I was like, when we first met, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember it. I had Saturday the 13th, but I had it, of course, I had my time zones mixed up. So I had it in my calendar 3 hours ahead of Pacific time, not 3 hours behind Pacific time. So I was all ready to meet you at 1 o'clock, I think, in the afternoon today. But you had sent me that reminder email. I'm like, wait, it's not 1. It's at 7. It's at 8.
Yes, eight,
So
eight. So yeah, so
yeah.
I was like, make sure I. So yes, thank
So
you
it
for bringing
worked.
up. So for any of my potential guests, that is what you have to look forward to. I send you and I highlight things and I make sure that everything is like send little banners. So originally I asked you about before, but like when you were a kid, when you were young, like what did you want to be when you grew up? Like were you always that adventurous as a kid?
Oh no, no. I was pretty timid, generally speaking. I mean, I was wild in the sense that, my early sowing my seeds of drinking a lot and hanging out and being social, probably partly as a mask for being a bit insecure or whatever, was definitely a big part of me and my life. But no, I wanted to be a pilot, but because I didn't know I was a kid. And then I wanted to go into advertising, probably because it was social. And then I just kind of fell into consulting coming out of school. But no, I had no burning passion around what it is I wanted to do. And then, entrepreneurism, I think, grew out of the consulting side, which was, it's time to actually put your money where your mouth is, or put your ass where your mouth is, and take some accountability instead of telling everybody else what they should be doing. So it was more definitely an evolution. It was not, like a lot of artists that I have a lot of respect for, or or people in other careers in business world. They seem to have like a very clear, or sports have a very clear, like they just loved something beyond, like multiples of more than other things, and they knew right from an early age. But that wasn't me.
I'm in your category. I come from a family that my parents worked in for companies, factories, and their idea was graduate high school, we got a job for you. I've already talked to the boss. You're ready to go to work. And I'm like, I don't want to be stuck in a factory. That's like I'm too gay to go and sweat. Sorry. But, um, so as soon as back then it was computerized office administration, which is what my degree is, and for those of you, that's basically a glorified office assistant. But this is back when we had to do floppy disk on our computers. We had to flop it up and do the DOS commands to do it. So yeah, I'm that old. Um, but I wanted, I think from the beginning, like I wanted to work in an office, and that was like, okay, I want to be like an assistant. I want to be a manager. And then um, rehab was the thing in my life that made the difference. I was turning 37, and winter rehab came out, and I was like, I don't want to do that anymore. Like I want to do something different. What for you? What was that point in your life where that
That's
set
a
you
good
in a different
question.
turning?
I think it wasn't quite as stark as that. It was probably more of a realization as I was going through the early aughts that this was continuing. Consulting's fairly, you don't have to make any commitments when you're consulting, because you're moving from place to place. You're on the road all the time. You don't have to commit to a relationship. Or at least you don't, you can avoid, it's an easy out. You don't have to commit to a work environment. You don't have to commit to a schedule. You don't have to commit to almost anything. And after a while, that leaves you quite lost. And I think that's, drinking is a nice compatriot for that type of lifestyle. And I learned from the best, believe me, some of the partners that I worked with who were very successful, but had problems. Kind of set that example. That's too strong, but I, could see those patterns. And after a while, it's like, it's a lonely existence. It's a very moreless kind of life without any real direction. So I think it was more of a kind of seeing where that was going to go and maybe getting a little bored of it and saying, you know what, I need to do something else. And it was kind of a push away from that after doing it for quite some time.
I can understand that because you're in this environment and everybody else is enjoying their life, but we only see the front side.
Yeah, and you saw other people. I was like, oh, people would graduate from school and then they would get a steady job and then they would get married and then they would have kids. And I was kind of like, and before you knew it, like there was only a few of us left, and the few of us that were left was like, wow, this is getting a little sad. So it was that was an element of it too. It was kind of like, you don't really feel like I wasn't maturing, probably still catching up on some of that lack of maturity because I was kind of just living that type of groundless lifestyle, and kind of it starts to get a little scary after a while.
Because I was, and I wrote down committing because I totally understand that. I was working in marketing and promotions for a long time, about 12 years, and it was gig after gig. I started giving out.
I think that would be similar.
Crackers. Yeah, I started off as store demos, giving out cookies and cracker samples at the store on the weekends, and graduated to hiring, training, and promoting large companies and at big events. But it's the same thing. You have the client, you meet, you kind of court each other for a little bit, and you kind of like the dating process. Okay, we're going to put on this event, which is like the big wedding. You do the event, it's like a couple of weekends, and then you're done. And you're like, oh, okay. Like, although I know in my head that that's what it was, the feelings were still kind of like, oh, okay, that's over. So now let's go find somebody else.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, and it feels like you're almost forgotten.
Yeah, because they're not going to think about you till next season when they have to start over again.
That's right.
And you're like, I am not your temporary love,
but you are.
But you are, yeah.
I hated it.
They have their relationships. They're just like the side piece for a couple of months. That just made me very depressed right now. I think, but I think now the shows for Little Mexican Productions are shows that have a schedule. We have a time that we go on. We're on.
That's right. You have to be somewhere.
Yeah, I think because I'm totally digging it. Like, yes,
you have guests like me depending on you, and an audience.
Yes. Like for y'all watching, it is actually we're 15 minutes before the end of the show, and I count on you so that I can be here. I need you, people. I need you. So if you're on Facebook, make sure you follow the page. Share with your friends. If you're on YouTube, scroll down, just subscribe to the show, and like this episode, make a comment. Even after the show's over, if you're watching this on a replay, we will answer any questions you bring up. And if you're on Twitter, you just retweet this and make a comment, and we'll make sure to get back to you. So at the 45-minute mark, it's when I usually ask my guests to share some words of wisdom with our audience. So, Chris Becker, what words of wisdom do you have?
I don't know if I am qualified to give official wisdom, but there are some cliches that when I was young that people would say that I thought of as cliches, that as I get older, I've started to realize that cliches are cliches for a reason and why they last. They usually have a kernel of truth, but the meaning of them is usually deeper and takes longer to understand than maybe the simplistic, way that they might sound when you're in your 20s or when you're 30s. And I wish that I had taken that more seriously or been a little bit more respectful of some of that when I'd heard them the first time. So, it could be almost a lot of things probably a lot of people would find familiar. Like, if you have a dream, you should really, and you believe in that, and that's what you love, and it's a passion that you should pursue that. When I was young, I'd be like, ugh, that's so unrealistic. Maybe I was because I was a kid of the 80s. No, you needed to work 80 hours a week. And, you watched the movie Wall Street's coming to my mind. But there's truth to that in the sense that, if you really commit to that, it pulls you in the direction. It takes you in that direction. Another one is, if you really work hard or you need to persist and kind of it's 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. I'd be like, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And I was like, nope, it's absolutely true. And, learning that through experience and then looking back, it's like, wow, if I had just taken those words of wisdom at face value, or those, maybe even I considered them cliches pejoratively, I would have saved so much time and just trusted that there was some truth in that. So, I've had a lot of respect for some of the things that I used to think were maybe cliche or silly. Now that I'm seeing it, it's like, no, those are truths, or those are cliches for a reason, or sayings for a reason. So those would be a couple. That a lot of those phrases or ideas have something in them. That's why they're still around.
Interesting enough, the gentleman that I interviewed at noon today, at the end of the show, we were talking, and there was a wisdom section, and we were kind of in the same place. He's like, the sayings have a reason. They stuck around because that's what.
If they weren't true, they'd be gone. We'd have forgotten. We wouldn't know about them. Yeah. So I'm constantly amazed. And now when I hear them, I like to think, and I was like, okay, well, why is that a thing? Why is that? What is it about that? Because it's not computing for me. I don't see why that doesn't make sense. So really try to kind of unpack it a bit and see, what is it about that makes that true, and kind of turn it around instead of. I like to think, hopefully, you don't have to learn every lesson the hard way. Hopefully, there's some life hacks you can learn from a few others. There's a lot of lessons you're going to learn the hard way. You don't have to learn every lesson the hard way.
Yeah, there doesn't have to be. Listen to this, folks. There doesn't have to be a bruise for every lesson in life. I definitely have a lot of them. So here are two 50-year-old men telling you, you don't.
You're going to get them anyways. Yeah, like that's inevitable. But I'm not. I've decided not to go looking for them, and if somebody's got a lesson to be learned out there that stuck around, then I'm definitely listening to it now compared to, say, even 10 years ago when I thought I knew everything.
Yeah, because I was definitely the double dare guy. Like, oh, you double dare me? Like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah,
I'll prove to you why that's not true.
Shit. Wait a minute, it's the Garza effect. And then I come up and I'm like, okay, you were right. Yeah. Does Chris Becker have a pep talk for himself when things are not going the way he wants to?
I have in my washroom, actually, but it's a framed phrase from Babe Ruth, which says, "It's hard to beat a person who never gives up." So I like to. It's right there next to my mirror. So every morning I am forced to read it, and it's along this line of perseverance and persistence. And so that would be one. And I have a few versions of the same thing that I often tell myself and tell my employees ad nauseum, to the point where I think they're sick of me. But a similar phrase or quote along that same lines is from Winston Churchill: "When you find yourself in the middle of hell, keep going." So those two quotes and that whole idea of persistence and perseverance for me is probably kind of at the center.
That's almost like I love country music, and there's a song that says, "If you're going to hell, keep on going."
Yeah,
you might get out before the devil even finds out you're there, and it's so true. So if you're watching this and you're like, I'm going, just keep going, man, keep going. I told my clients, and like, it's called the tunnel for a reason because there's an entrance and an exit. Otherwise, it'd be a cave. So if you're going through the tunnel, keep going. You're gonna come out eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're down to the last 2 minutes. Any last words before we go, sir?
Well, first of all, Dale, thank you for bringing me on. I think what you're doing is great. I am constantly amazed at some of the great people I'm meeting in this, alcohol-free community, and a lot of the different journeys that people are on. And I would say to anybody that are kind of interested in that, or whether you're coming from the sobriety side or just hearing about some of this more and more for the first time, check it out and see what's out there. It's a very open community. I think it's giving people a chance to talk about whatever aspect of where alcohol may fit in their lives in a more permissive way, in a more kind of open way. I think even Hollywood kind of normalizing the idea that it's okay to talk about addiction, or even to talk about drinking less or what have you, has been, is just another example. So yeah, I've been excited through my own journey, just seeing how much is out there that I couldn't have imagined until I started looking. So I just encourage anybody else who's out there, don't assume you're alone. Try to reach out and see what else is out there. Odds are you're not.
That's pretty cool. For everybody, what I was drinking today is pasta. So here it is. Go in there. I purchased the sampler because I wanted to see what was available. I've not been disappointed. I've tried two, so go try them out. I'll post some of the other ones that I've tried, but those are the two I've had so far. And I just removed the picture. What was the one that I was talking about first?
Partake.
Beer. Partake. Get yourself a little T-bone. T-bone with a baked potato and a nice Caesar salad. Have the partake. You will, if you're a Texas boy like me, you will, and don't want to drink alcohol, do it. This one, I would say, it's a nice celebration drink. Toast is a good celebration drink. Like if you don't like, if you miss champagne, if you like the flavor of like champagne and the kind of bubbly flavory, this is really cool. It's very refreshing. I would always want to mix it with some lemonade just to see how it comes across. But give it a little extra. We're gonna experiment on that. We need to talk, Chris. We need to talk about that. Give it a Latino flavor.
I'll keep you busy for a while. Yeah, yes. That's a great idea.
We need to Latinoize some of the drinks, and we're going to talk about that. As soon as I can travel, we're going to tell you.
Good.
For everybody watching, thank you so much for adjusting our time. Okay, so we have 7 minutes. For everybody watching, thank you for joining us. This is Putting Together Conversations. Remember, we have 2 shows on Saturday, noon and 5. So different guests every time. So check us out on all of the major social media pages: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, Alignable. We're in the Orange County neighborhood page. So everywhere you can find our advertisements. As usual, if you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, just scroll down and you'll see all the information that we've talked about in the show. Everything from the Better Roads link, so it'll be right there for you to check it out. I'm also going to, since we talked about Sober Curious, I'm going to post the Vorvita ad that I talked about, so you guys can check it out. If you're interested in controlling your drinking, not necessarily you want to stop, but you want to control it, there are options out there. So we are going to help you out as much as we can. Also, make sure you follow us. Little Mexican Productions has 3 shows on the air. So on Wednesdays, you can find us at 7:30 p.m. All of these are Pacific Standard Time on the Christian and Daniel Show. On Fridays at 6 p.m. for the Card Devo. And then, of course, on Saturdays, you can find the 2 episodes of Put Together Conversations. I'm losing out. Again, I had a shot yesterday, and it's for shingles. It's the shingles vaccine.
Oh, no.
You know? Yeah, but it's kind of like the flu shot. Like they inject, and for a couple of days, you just feel like, oh my God. And I slept for 2 hours between the morning show and this show. I just took a big long nap.
You've got good energy considering you had the shingles shot. Imagine the energy without the shingles shot.
It's all for you, Chris. It's all for you.
I appreciate it.
For you.
Thanks, buddy.
As soon as we're done, I'm like, damn, No, but hey, we do what we love, and we put the energy into what we love. And we, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, and it comes through. That's why I think it's a great show.
gonna do this, but I hope you come back whenever you have some new product or something else to launch. Please come back to the
I would
show.
love to. Let's work on those Hispanic or Latino drinks. Latino
I'm telling
drinks.
you,
I'm
there's a
in.
market. There's a market.
I agree.
Uh, for everybody watching, thank you so much for being part of the show. We appreciate your support. Make sure you follow us, you like this, you share this. For now, Chris, any last words before we go?
No, thanks again, Daniel. I appreciate it. Hope you guys check out the site if you're interested in trying a few drinks. I hope you enjoy it. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Don't go anywhere, Chris. Let me just think about everybody. Thank you, everybody, for watching. This is Put Together Conversations. I'm your host, Daniel Garza, and we'll see you next week. Hey, remember, put it together.